very, very C-grade performance by the Russian army. They were gaining ground, attacking, but only by destroying cities, and so on and so forth. So it's about Kharkiv, it's about Kherson. So the overall sentiment is that the Russians are losing. They're doing very poorly, and that's what many people seem to be thinking. And there is, I mean, it makes sense to think that way because the Russians withdrew from Kharkiv, the Russians withdrew from Kherson. So what's happening? So let us revisit this one more time. Let's take a look at the map. So somebody was very kind enough to send me a good map of Ukraine on Twitter. I usually use an interactive map, but let's take a look at this map. I don't know who the person is, but thank you very much, sir or ma'am, for sending this map. This is a very good color coded map, and it will help us understand the thing better, the situation better. So this is an older map. You can see that the Crimean Republic is shown as part of Ukraine. It is no longer part of Ukraine. It was annexed by the Russians in 2014. The four Crimean oblasts or republic, the four Ukrainian oblasts or republics that have been annexed by Russia are Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk, right? The four southeastern ones. Now, the situation is that the Russians a few months ago withdrew from Kharkiv, right? Kharkiv is the city over here in the north. They withdrew from it. They withdrew from Kharkiv. And recently, just a few days ago, they withdrew from north of the Dnieper River in the Kherson Oblast. So they evacuated Kherson city for several months before this happened, for several weeks before this happened. And then they withdrew from the right bank of the Dnieper River, which is the northwest of the Kherson province. That is what happened, right? So what they did before they withdrew is they evacuated all the Russian-speaking people from that region. See, the Kherson region is Russian majority, and that's why the Russians have annexed it. But they evacuated all the Russian ethnicity people, the Russian-speaking people from that region for several weeks, and only then they withdrew from the region because they knew what the Ukrainians would otherwise do to the Russian speakers, because we know what they've been doing to the Russian speakers since 2014. So the Russians did this first, and then they withdrew from that part of Kherson province. And I had said when the news first came in that there are three possibilities of what's really happening. The first possibility is that NATO is winning. This is a proxy war between Russia and NATO. Ukraine is the proxy. So the first possibility is that NATO is winning and Russia is losing. That's why they were thrown out of Kharkiv and they were forced to evacuate from that part of Kherson, right? So if that is true, if this possibility is the correct possibility, if this is the right thing, then you will see that the Ukrainians will try to cross the river and try to move into the other part, the Russian occupied part of Kherson province, which is south of the river Dnieper, and they may even try to make a move on Crimea. So if NATO is winning, if the Russians have been thrown out, then this is what's going to happen. But it's not happened thus far. So what's the second possibility? The second possibility I said is that there are negotiations going on secretly for a ceasefire, and the Russian withdrawal from this part of Kherson is maybe a prerequisite for the ceasefire, and maybe something will happen during the G20 summit or right after the G20 summit, immediately after it. Well, the G20 summit came and went this week, and nothing was announced. And there's been no move in that direction either. And the third possibility I said is that the Russians are laying a nasty trap for NATO. So they will withdraw from this region, let the Ukrainian forces, NATO forces, come into the Kherson city, and then they will obliterate it. Well, even that has not happened. The Ukrainians are not stupid. They also sense that there could be this sort of nasty surprise waiting for them. So they have not moved into Kherson city in big numbers. Yes, they have taken the city, of course, and so on. They've so-called liberated the city, and that's what's happening. So I had put forth three possibilities. NATO winning is one. Second is ceasefire negotiations happening in secret. And third, nasty trap for NATO. Well, thus far, we have seen nothing happening. Neither possibility A, nor possibility B, nor possibility C. So what is happening? What is happening? And, I am sure there is a lot of anger in Russia as well about, first of all, the withdrawal from Kharkiv, and secondly, then this new withdrawal from north of the Dnieper River in the Kherson region. I am sure there is a great deal of anger and resentment among the Russian population. And in Russia, when you have a de facto dictator who's ruling the country, this sort of resentment is very dangerous. It is very dangerous. It can lead to the downfall if of the leader, Mr. Putin, if he becomes deeply unpopular, if he is seen to have failed. And yet he willingly withdrew his forces from Kharkiv, and he willingly withdrew his forces from Kherson. So what's happening? What's happening? There is a fourth possibility. I believe that the Russians are waiting for winter. It's still not winter. If you Google the weather in Kiev right now, you will see it's 0 degrees or -1, -2 thereabouts. Yeah, so it's late autumn. It's already becoming really cold. It's already touching the 0 degrees mark and going into the negative temperatures. Yes, but it's not winter yet. When is winter really there? Winter is really there in full force when the ground freezes. When the ground freezes, when the rivers freeze over. The rivers don't necessarily have to freeze over, but the ground needs to freeze. All the muddy, boggy patches of ground all over Ukraine. Ukraine is extremely flat. It's flat like a pancake. There are no hills, there are no mountains. It's flat, flat, flat. And there are places where you have mud, there are places you have bog and all that. All that in winter, it freezes, it becomes solid. I believe the Russians are waiting for that to happen. And right now, what they are doing is they have pulled out their forces from Kharkiv, from Kherson. They are reconfiguring their forces. They have also recruited more people and all that. And they are waiting for the ground to freeze. They are waiting for General Winter to make his arrival into Novorossiya, into Ukraine. And I believe once that happens, there will be a major push forward, military push forward. The Russian people will not tolerate any perceived loss by the Russian armed forces. Right? So it is a significant possibility, in my opinion, that the Russians are merely waiting. They are withdraw. This is the tactical withdrawal. They are waiting for the ground to freeze, and then there will be a major push forward. So by mid-December, perhaps you could see a major upsurge in military activity and major push forward by the Russian forces. They have until now withheld significant portions of their military. The Air Force has hardly been involved at all. It is being kept in reserve for the future big war. And there's a whole lot more to come. So I think there is a possibility, number four, that within a month's time, maybe in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whenever the ground freezes, the Russians will push forward, big push forward, massive push forward. And that could essentially change the map of Ukraine forever. And NATO knows that. Because why do I say NATO knows that? I say this because, let me put something on the screen, because of this. This is from the Washington Post. It's from November 5. Today is November 20. That's like 2 weeks ago. The US privately asks Ukraine to show it's open to negotiate with Russia. Yeah. So over here, it's being said that the encouragement is not aimed at pushing Ukraine to the negotiating table, but ensuring it maintains a moral high ground in the eyes of international backers and so on. But the Americans are asking Ukraine to privately to show that it's open to negotiate. Maybe there are negotiations that are happening. We don't know. Maybe there are. These things are not announced until it's a fait accompli. Yeah. So I think there is a significant possibility that the Russian withdrawal from Kharkiv, from Kherson, etc., it's a tactical withdrawal. It's like a chess move in which you pull back for a while. Maybe sometimes you may even sacrifice a pawn or a chess piece here and there, and then you do what you are really planning to do. So I think, I may be wrong, of course, but I think in 2 to 3 weeks, maybe by mid-December, when the ground is totally frozen, you will see a major offensive that will change the whole dynamics of the war. Major Russian offensive. So let's see. I'm putting this out in the open. Let's see if I'm right. Let's see if I'm wrong. Time will tell us. By mid-December, I think this could happen. Or maybe by the latest by the end of December. I don't think the Russians will wait. Once the ground is properly frozen, I don't think they'll wait. They're going to push. So let's see if this is the case. And they have the ability to overrun significant portions of Ukraine in very less time, especially if the Air Force gets involved. In that case, they can annihilate the resistance from the NATO-backed Ukrainian proxy forces. So that is what could be in the offing. That's what could come very soon. Let's wait and watch, and let's see if I'm right or if I will be proven wrong.